Have Canadians been sold the idea that Mark Carney is a world-class negotiator without seeing world-class results? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Maple Conservative Girl. My name is Danica, and today I am taking a closer look at Canada's relationship with the United States and asking a simple question. Is the Liberal government getting the outcomes the Canadians were promised? I'll break down a CBC interview with a Conservative MP, I'll examine the Gordie Howe International Bridge Agreement, look at the latest CUSMA negotiations, and discuss why Conservatives believe that Canada is negotiating from a position of weakness. I'll also talk about the media, because while Canada faces major trade challenges, economic uncertainty, and important negotiations with our largest trading partner, the mainstream media's narrative seems to revolve around Pierre Poilievre's leadership. I'll explain why I think that is happening, whether the media is giving the government enough scrutiny, and why I believe that this Liberal government and the mainstream media are failing Canadians. So if you enjoy my conservative commentary on Canadian politics, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and shared it with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this. And let's get right into it. So, Conservative MP Shuvaloy Majumdar, newly appointed by Pierre Poilievre as shadow critic to Canada-US relations, this was his first real big interview in the position, and we can see that he is going to do a great job on this file. The Conservatives, we know where we stand on this trade file with America. So it is nice to see this interview coming out and him actually saying what every conservative is actually thinking.
And they use that leverage to extract this concession, whatever it is. Now, I've tried to get a sense of the dollar amount, at least the order of magnitude of what the profit sharing could be. And as we are having this conversation, I have no clarity on that. So it's one of three conclusions. They don't know, which I think is unlikely. It's so big they don't want to say because it's embarrassing, or it's not that meaningful and they don't want to say because they don't want to antagonize the president. It's got to be somewhere in that range of options, it seems to me. But it doesn't seem like we got anything except the bridge is opening at the end of the month.
I agree with you. We didn't get anything for this, and that's my big concern. You know, I had been an advisor to Stephen Harper and John Baird in the time that this bridge had been negotiated. The relationship with the United States that Canada holds is a wide-ranging and very complex relationship of many issues, spanning our entire economies and our security framework. What we have seen in the last decade or so is the emergence of China and its weaponization of commercial relationships, which have profound consequences for our energy, our infrastructure, our investment, and our security posture. Now, CUSMA, through successive American administrations, Republican and Democrat, and the Congress, has been principally about how we manage our security and our prosperity in this context. And in that, the negotiation approach that Canada needed to bring to Washington when it came to something as vital to our future as CUSMA and tariffs and these individual issues like the Gordie Howe Bridge are, needs to sit back and say there's a wide array of issues that are the Canadian interest. Right. And on those interests, we need to sit across the table from Washington and come to a wider deal. The longer we dilly-dally and dawdle around on these issues and not come to an actual agreement on how Canada will survive and succeed in North America, the more vulnerable we will be to ad hoc negotiations like we've seen the one imposed on the Gordie Howe Bridge. I mean, the Prime Minister has our sympathy for dealing with an unpredictable and tough negotiator in Washington. He does not have our sympathy from not having been serious about successive Canadian workers over the last 15 months.
But what evidence is there that Canada is the one dilly-dallying on this, Mr. Majumdar?
The Conservatives say that the government does not appear to be treating these trade negotiations with the urgency that they deserve. The United States is Canada's largest trading partner. Millions of Canadian jobs, workers, depend on that relationship, and yet Canadians have very little clarity about where the negotiations actually stand. Meanwhile, Mexico appears to be making more visible progress in its discussions with the United States, while Canada's government has shared very few details about its own strategy. The lack of transparency leaves businesses and investors wondering what's happening behind closed doors. Our industries are the sacrificial lambs on the front lines of this trade dispute. Canadian manufacturers, exporters, and resource companies are the ones dealing with the uncertainty, and they need confidence, they need predictability, they need to know that the government is treating this as a top priority. Do you think that the government treats this trade negotiation with America as their top priority? Because it doesn't look like that to me. When Prime Minister Mark Carney is asked about the relationship with the United States, he often points out that Canada already has one of the best trade agreements in the world. It's true in the sense that CUSMA provides Canada with valuable access to the US market, but that's not what we're asking here. We're asking, what is the government's plan to protect and strengthen that agreement going forward? CUSMA was not negotiated by Mark Carney, and its future is far from guaranteed. The agreement includes a scheduled review, and the uncertainty surrounding that process is important because businesses make investment decisions based on stability and long-term confidence that we have with the United States. If companies are not sure what the trading relationship with the United States will look like in a few years, of course, they will hesitate before investing in Canada because they rely on that trade deal. No deal, no investment. And this, just because of that, should be one of the federal government's highest priorities. And workers are losing their jobs left, right, and center because companies are going down to the United States. What's the point of even doing business in Canada? Securing certainty in our trade relationship isn't just another policy issue, it's an economic necessity. The sooner Canada can negotiate a stable path forward, the sooner the businesses, workers, and investors can make decisions with greater confidence. That's what this government should be focused on, but they are not. And then David asks, so how can you say that Canada is dilly-dallying? Well, let's look at the response.
Some big decisions Canada could have been making to build incentives and great leverage for our country's future. The first is to establish, as Pierre Poilievre has suggested, a strategic reserve of NATO-grade critical minerals and for energy security in the world. The second is to unlock our resources through removing anti-development, anti-pipeline, anti-shipping legislation to cancel the industrial carbon tax. And this is important because we are talking about trillions of dollars of Canadian commodity strength that should be shovel-ready and approved within 6 months and capable of being able to access international markets, including the United States. We should be rebuilding our auto pact with the United States when it comes to our auto workers with Auto Pact 2.0, which would increase production. We should be advancing our defense industrial base. We have seen that there are massive shortages of the kinds of things that defend the free world, and Canada ought to be a major producer. These are all domestic decisions that build strength and give us the opportunity to engage not just America, but the world with strength.
Right.
None of those decisions have been made. That's where this government has been dilly-dallying. And even during CUSMA negotiations, we have seen a liberal minister after liberal minister from industry to heritage go to Beijing to negotiate God knows what, instead of going to Houston, Florida, New York, Los Angeles. So I know exactly what serious negotiation should look like, and that's not what we've seen in 15 months.
Exactly. Instead of going down to America to work with Trump, Mark Carney is off in China, making deals which are bad for this country. The 49,000 Chinese EVs coming into this country, where are the guardrails? Nobody knows. Canada is dilly-dallying because they have not done anything to build Canada actually strong to go up against the United States in negotiations, and it is Canada's fault. They always blame Trump, but what are we doing to build Canada strong? The Liberals take a victim stance like, oh, poor us, we have no choice but to go make deals with China because it's Trump's fault. Trump is pushing us towards China. We have no choice to make deals with China, which Mark Carney said himself that China is the biggest threat to our democracy, which he is not wrong to say that. But what is he doing even going to Beijing when he should be in America? Mark Carney's government is hurting us. They're the ones that are hurting us, as they have not prioritized the relationship with America, and he has not prioritized building Canada strong. It is just their slogan. It means absolutely nothing, because what is better? What is getting better at all? There's nothing that's getting better. All of our domestic issues are getting worse and worse and worse. Our trade with America is getting worse, and all of his diversification is doing nothing, okay? It's doing absolutely nothing.
Okay, but again, that is an assessment of what your priorities would be versus what their priorities seem to be, not that.
I think our priorities,
Well,
the priorities are the Canadian worker, right? Like,
I understand, but my question was about what evidence is there that Canada is the problem here? Because all of the public evidence on basically every big issue on earth right now that involves the Americans seems to be that it's their use of their leverage and their economic dominance against their historic allies is the issue everywhere.
Well, look at how many times in North America our friends in Mexico have been engaging Washington on a range of issues, from Chinese products in their markets to securing their borders from criminal cartels.
But they have a different structure of economy. They've been a bigger transshipment point.
We're repeating the same mistake, David, that the Trudeau cabinet did, which is still the same one that staffs Prime Minister Carney, which is that we're allowing America and Mexico to come to terms on what a North American deal should look like, and then impose that on Canada. That was the bad deal we got last time with Justin Trudeau, and the same cabinet is advising this Prime Minister to do the same thing. We have seen a wait-and-see approach from Ottawa, as opposed to a build strength and engage approach that Conservatives are offering. And for 15 months, it's unconscionable, because I'm the one who has to talk to auto workers, lumber workers, aluminum workers, look them in their eyes and explain why they have so much anxiety and uncertainty about their future.
Okay, Shuvaloy Majumdar, we're out of time.
The priority of the Conservatives are the workers. What are the priorities of this government? Because it doesn't look like it's the workers. The government, they just gaslight us into thinking that they're amazing while implementing nothing but subsidies and pushing for this crazy net zero agenda, which I argue is doing nothing but impoverishing the little people and making people like Mark Carney, who are invested in net zero, richer. And look at what's happening as a result of pushing this liberal ideology over the last 10 years. After 10 years, people had enough of Justin Trudeau's activist government, and then they brought in a banker with a strong resume and a steady hand ready to guide us through this crisis. Meanwhile, the deficit remains large. The government continues to pursue ambitious net zero policies while also presenting itself as being supportive of major resource projects. Pick a lane. I think that Canada needs a government that's focused first and foremost on economic growth, investment, competitiveness, and restoring confidence in our relationship with our biggest trading partner. Elbows Up should be and should have always been about building Canada strong from within. That should be priority number one. And then, sure, diversify if you want, but that should not be the priority. Conservatives are not against diversification. What we are against is that Carney is not actually building Canada strong, and he's not prioritizing the number one thing that he should be prioritizing, and spending $500,000 a year on in-flight catering. What the hell are they eating? But somehow the liberal voters think that there's nothing that Carney can do about Trump and that he's doing a great job because Trump is irrational and he's destroying the whole world, and that Poilievre's Conservatives wouldn't be able to do a better job, that Poilievre doesn't have a plan, or that he would bow down to Trump. Well, actually, if you just take a look at the Gordie Howe situation, the bridge deal that just happened, and the CUSMA situation and the tariffs, I argue that it is Carney that is bowing down to Trump. He is a bad negotiator. He said that he was good in a crisis, that he was going to solve this crisis, and everything with America is worse, and we are in a recession. And the so-called deals that he's getting around the world, I argue, are bringing nothing of significance to Canadians, and the deals are all going to take years to bear fruit. It's just an announcement. They're all just announcements. And we all know that the Liberal track record on making things happen is not very good, right? It's all announcements and no substance. It's all an illusion, as Pierre Poilievre says. And I think the Liberals don't care to negotiate with America. I've been saying it since the very beginning of this podcast, of this YouTube channel, that I don't think that they want to deal with America. And they have the media that is subsidized by them, and so they're holding water for the liberals and for Carney and literally bending over backwards, turning themselves into pretzels, trying to make him look good. Meanwhile, they complain about Pierre being so mean, taking a jab at the red Tories like Corey Tenecki, who is a lobbyist. And because of that, people think that Carney is great, when in reality, we are in a recession, okay? A technical recession, a recession, whatever you want to call it, it's a recession. And CUSMA is hanging by a thread. The unemployment is high, the deficit is high. That is the definition of good propaganda. Okay, the industries are bleeding down to the United States, which is exactly what Trump wants. Elbows up. Businesses continue to face uncertainty. Investment has been sluggish in many sectors because it's so icky to invest here. They all invest in the United States, shutting down businesses where hardworking family men work. The tradesmen, they all go down to America, giving jobs to Americans and taking Canadians' jobs away. Our economy is not doing well, okay? The media focuses on the definition of a recession, just a technical recession, not a real one, people, instead of Canadian workers, because that is not the priority of this liberal government, so it seems. A strong economy gives a government more leverage internationally, but the only leverage that we really have is what? The alcohol? What kind of leverage is that when we are literally sitting on the fourth biggest oil reserve in the world? But we have a government and a prime minister who wants 50% of our oil to stay in the ground, and instead of unleashing our energy sector, they announce a federally regulated pipeline with 1,000,001 conditions. And even then, the prime minister has said that he will not use our energy sector as leverage in negotiations with America. Why not? A weaker economy, like the one that we have, can make trade negotiations more difficult, especially when you're negotiating with a country as economically powerful as the United States. They are literally like 15 times bigger than us. But what is the government doing to build up our leverage or even negotiate with Trump? You know, they should have taken this Gordie Howe situation as a way to build a case for Canada, along with everything else, to get a fair trade agreement with America. I am not saying that the deal with Trump is a walk in the park. I'm saying that Mark Carney said he could do it, and we have no leverage. After 15 months, there is zero leverage. The only leverage we have comes from Doug Ford taking alcohol off the shelves. Like, that's the only leverage that we have. And you'd think that if they were serious about building Canada strong, they would actually be building something. But they're not. They're building subsidized programs that they're paying with our tax money that we don't have. We do not have money. We have a huge deficit, and all they're doing is building programs that do nothing. And people thought Carney was new. Meanwhile, he had spent the last 5 years being Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, economically advising Trudeau to lead us to where we are economically today, which was in the toilet. Canada has become too dependent on government spending while falling behind on the fundamentals that create long-term prosperity. Encouraging private investment, developing our natural resources, improving productivity, and creating an environment where businesses are confident enough to invest in and grow. Governments do not create prosperity by announcing more programs and handing out money to failing industries and bailing their friends out. They create the conditions for prosperity by reducing unnecessary barriers and getting out of the way, encouraging investment, and just allowing businesses and workers to succeed and allowing people to build. I hear liberals all the time say that these programs are necessary to protect Canadians during periods of economic uncertainty, which the liberals have put us in. They see the Liberal government as playing an active role in supporting growth and cushioning economic shocks caused by them. And they also believe that Pierre Poilievre will cut healthcare and cut your dental program and cut your this and cut your that. And he hates women because he wants to cut the childcare program. He doesn't want women to go to work, which is not even a good program, okay? You have to put your kid on the list before you conceive the child. It's like a 3-year waiting list. I don't know anybody who got into the program. No, he will cut things like Alto, which I have a whole episode on why Alto is a complete waste of taxpayer money. We do not need a high-speed rail cutting through Canada's farmland, ripping up the land, separating farmers from their lands, and taking their lands from them. We don't need the Pew Pew buyback program, which Gary Ananda Sangari was caught on a hot mic saying that the program was pointless, like it doesn't even work well, and went through with the program anyways. The police don't even want to waste their time implementing the program because there's so much actual crime in the streets. And it's funny because the Liberals say that they need to take people's pew-pews away from them, from law-abiding citizens, to, combat crime. Meanwhile, what are they doing about the actual crime in the streets? The police don't have time to implement this program because they're too busy dealing with actual real crime. And we don't need to be sending over billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine and then telling Canadians, oh no, we can't cut the industrial carbon tax because it brings revenue for programs. You know what we should do? We should cut the industrial carbon tax and also cut the funding to any other country until our country is back on track, and cut all these stupid programs like bailing out condo developers, the Build Canada Homes, the Alto, the federally funded pipeline. Just get out of the way and stop trying to control the economy.
There's a couple of things about the deal. First, I'm happy the bridge is going to be open. We need it. We need it because we're still expanding trade. The second thing is the word net does a lot of work in this. We are sharing after Canada is paid back. So we get the revenues, then the servicing of the costs of the bridge, and paying the debt of the bridge, and then what's left over, there's a split of that for 15 years. And the U.S. money is invested back in economic development in the region, the U.S. side of the region, obviously, which is going to help drive more traffic. The initial years of this bridge, there is, traffic volumes are going to build up, so there's not going to be a lot of net to split. So look, it's a good deal for Canada, and what's really good is getting the bridge done on time.
This bridge is one of the most important infrastructure projects between Canada and the United States. Canada financed the entire thing. We paid for it all. And once it's fully operational, it's expected to strengthen trade between Windsor and Detroit. But earlier this year, the bridge became part of a political dispute. As we all know, President Trump raised concerns about the existing arrangement, and Canada and the United States negotiated changes before the bridge was allowed to open. So basically, after paying off the debt, we'll split the rest with America 50-50. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like that Mark Carney is saying. The government's position is that getting the bridge open and protecting cross-border trade is the priority, and compromise is often part of international negotiations. That this is good for Canada, that, we need to give things up because we absolutely need to open the bridge, right? But when asked about CUSMA negotiations, they refuse to compromise on anything or even negotiate anything because they, quote, refuse to get a bad deal. Well, then what was this deal? The concern that conservatives have is that Canada paid to build this bridge and still ended up making concessions after the United States applied a little pressure. Canadians were promised a government led by a world-class negotiator. So what is this? What do we get in return?
You run into a risk of economic self-harm, though, if you dig in on this one, right? If the bridge stays closed. I mean, this is the leverage play.
We are in a perpetual state of economic self-harm the longer that we have tariffs in place. This is another component of that. But again, it begs the question, where are we at in terms of the broader discussion around this deal? I think considering the Prime Minister ran on securing a better deal, being the guy to negotiate with Trump, we don't get a whole lot of details as Canadians about agreements like this one, when phone conversations happen with the president, the status of negotiations. And I think it's pretty ballsy, frankly, to ask Canadians for their support and then provide none of that information over the course of the last 16 18 months.
My understanding, Kate, and I don't know this for sure because even the government officials I was speaking with today, is that the money that goes to the development agency from the profits will be spent on the American side of the border, right? So, it is for them. It is a straight. I mean, it may benefit Windsor if it increases traffic flows coming the other way, but very indirectly, very indirectly. It is unquestionably a concession to get what Canada was entitled to.
Yeah, David can't even say it's not a concession. It is. The Conservatives have sent out a letter to Dominic LeBlanc asking, Canadians deserve straight answers. Will you immediately release the full agreement, including all amendments, side letters, financial arrangements, and commitments to the United States? What precisely will be divided? Gross toll revenue, operating profit, net profit after expenses, or revenue after Canada has fully recovered its investment? Yeah, what is the definition of profits, right? Like, what are we splitting? Will any bridge revenue be transferred, shared, or placed in the Economic Development Fund before Canadian taxpayers recoup the project's full cost? And who will decide what happens with the money in the fund? What does the government project this 15-year fund will distribute, and how much will be spent in Canada versus the United States? What new authority has been granted to the United States over toll rates? Can American officials block increases, demand decreases, or otherwise slow Canada's recovery of its investment? Did the agreement alter the bridge's ownership, governance, liabilities, or the original timetable for recovering Canada's contribution? And how many more years will it take to pay off now compared to before? And what did Canada receive in return, beyond American agreement not to obstruct the opening of a bridge that Canada alone paid to build? Yeah, we don't have the full picture, but that's exactly why these agreements deserve scrutiny. When billions of dollars and one of our most important trade corridors are involved, Canadians should have the right to know, to understand what was negotiated, what was given up, and what was gained. We want to know everything. But they're just like, shh, let's not talk about it. Just trust us. Yeah, right. And even after the concession that Mark Carney's Liberals look awful, right? Look at what Trump posted to his Truth Social yesterday. Yeah, good thing we have a Liberal government in charge so that Trump doesn't embarrass us. Notice how Mexico isn't even a part of this. Maybe because Trump has zero respect for the Canadian government?
Message discipline was what everybody talked about for years with the Conservatives. Now we have Jamil Javani using the word degenerate to describe people like gay pride. We've got Dean Allison running his own thing, looking at COVID and vaccine injuries. And then you've got this infighting and unnecessary targeting of conservative operators. Like, it is fraying in a way I never thought we'd see.
Well, that's usually the history of a conservative party when power is not in sight. And that's what happened the election. And since then, we've seen cracks in the armor of Pierre Poilievre as leader, but also as the party. Party discipline was easy when power was so near, them in the last election. You could see them. Now they're trying to maintain that discipline, but they feel like they're a bunch of parrots in the House of Commons, reciting the same thing over and over again during question period, for example. And to me, like Bob, this is going to be the summer of discontent for the Conservative Party, which may lead to people calling openly for the departure of Mr. Poilievre.
You think that's like, I don't know what's Twitter, X noise, whatever it is, and what is real. So this is real news.
But these are MPs and senior party operatives that are fighting each other. It's not some ordinary grassroots.
I'll point out
conservative.
something about the Quebec MPs, the Tory MPs. They were quite, very silent on Mr. Poilievre. Not silent, but supportive of him. One has left the party now. Richard Martel accepted a nomination in the Senate by Mark Carney. And that will open the door, I think, of more thinking, maybe people speaking more freely about the future of the party in Quebec. Also, if they lose the by-election that is coming up in that...
Martel sitting as an independent is a signal, right?
Exactly.
That is a real... Because he took a shadow cabinet post a week before he took a Senate post, right? So there's...
But I was told that he was in negotiations with the Liberals for a little while.
There it is. The Conservative MP who went to the Senate was in negotiations with the Liberals. How is this okay? This is wrong. And why is the media running this nonsense? Trade negotiations with the United States remain very unclear, and it looks like nothing is happening, right? We are in a recession, and nothing is getting better domestically, yet they waste their time talking about how the Conservative Party is fractured, the infighting, everybody. Everybody doesn't like Pierre Poilievre. They want him gone so bad. You know, if Poilievre was not a threat and actually a bad leader, wouldn't they just leave him alone like they do with the leader of every other opposition party? Like, they don't talk about, Yves Blanchette or Avi Lewis, just Pierre. Because he's actually popular. The party is not falling apart like Robert Fife would have you believe. They know that if Pierre Poilievre wins an election, a lot is going to change. So they want the mushy-wushy red Tories in power. It's like a witch hunt against Pierre Poilievre, when the reality is that the Conservatives within the party are fully behind Pierre. It's only the Ottawa bubble fake Tories like Erin O'Toole and Doug Ford and Corey Tenecki and all the other so-called Conservatives they have on these panels that don't want Pierre Poilievre in power because they're lobbyists and they want funding. But the truth is that the Conservatives across this country are behind Pierre. You be the judge of his popularity. Yeah, Conservatives despise Carney. We really do.
Carney, Prime Minister of Canada.
Oh my God, everyone's booing.
We do not like him. And the Liberals can't seem to do a little research enough to understand why. Why do we not like him? He's doing such a great job. They think that because they blindly watch this kind of garbage and think Pierre Poilievre is unpopular, which he's not. It's only the establishment that wants him gone. So they run this kind of stuff on the air, and the Liberals who watch this, like the Liberal voters who watch this on the CBC, think, oh yeah, he's very unpopular. But the actual Conservative voters are behind Pierre. Conservatives, we do not want red Tories leading the party, but the establishment wants that because Pierre is going to defund the CBC propaganda and make them fend for themselves, because we are not in the 80s anymore and we don't need people like David Cochrane and Rosemary Barton and Robert Fife here shoving propaganda down our throats and their biased opinions down our throats. They are unaffected by what's actually happening in this country. Clearly, they have not adapted, and what value do they bring? It's a shame that Carney is still popular, given the fact that he's not done anything for Canadians, and it's because of people like this sharing this garbage on the TV, totally disregarding the fact that Mark Carney's got MPs stepping down left, right, and center. Apparently there's infighting there over the pipeline. Stephen Guilbeault stepped down and said that how there's a growing number of people who don't like Mark Carney's way of doing things and they don't feel like they can speak up. We've got what looks like bribes for floor crossers, and I say that because Marilyn Gladue, the last floor crosser, said in an interview that after she crossed the floor, her needs and demands for her riding in the form of funding has been met. Whereas before it was like, oh, you're a Conservative riding? We're not giving you any funding. We're not going to listen to you. We're not going to listen to what your constituents need because you should have voted Liberal. Remember when Carney was caught on a hot mic saying that MPs are useful for votes? Because that's probably all he sees in them. He doesn't want to listen to them. And this caucus is not united in the way that the media would have you believe. They're not doing a good job on the economy, on the trade talks, bowing down to Trump on the bridge situation. But according to the media, it's the Conservatives who are fractured. And they think that the Conservatives can do better, that he's a bad leader. It's only the Liberals who think that because they smear him every chance they get on the media. The worse Carney does as a leader of this country, the more they attack Pierre Poilievre.
And the problem with Mr. Carney is for Mr. Poilievre, he can't control his party, and he looks like he's not a serious alternative to the Prime Minister.
They want to make it about the economy, the Conservatives. They want to attack Mr. Carney and the Liberals, or Prime Minister Carney, and the Liberals for not being able to manage the economy. They wanted everyone to start using the recession word.
You had to ignore all the global news to believe that so many of the problems are purely domestic in the creation, right? Like the Strait of Hormuz, the trade disruption, all of this. I mean, JD, like, you know, Canadians are paying attention to this stuff in a way they probably have never had, and you can see it, what's causing
And that's a good point. Canadians are paying attention more to global news.
Okay, so they're blaming Trump again, right? Trump can be a pain in the butt sometimes, sure, but there is so much this government can be doing to counter the tariffs. The tariffs reveal that our economy is not doing well. If we were strong, if we were able to stand on our own 2 feet, if we hadn't blocked prosperity and our resource sector over the last 10 years, maybe we wouldn't be feeling the tariffs as intensely. The tariffs are just exposing the weakness of this government, and they're not even trying to get a deal, so it seems. So yes, it is the Liberals' fault at this point. What are they doing to make Canada strong? Nothing. They're playing victim, and it's disgusting. And the woman, I don't know her name, but the woman talking about how the Conservatives just want to always make it about the economy. Yeah, because Canadians are suffering, because our economy is not doing well, and that is the job of the government, and we are in a recession, and the Liberals are to blame. Shame on Pierre Poilievre for doing his job. Get the Conservatives in power and see how this country will turn around. Pierre Poilievre has a plan, and it is a good plan. But the Liberal voters don't even think he has one, because instead of talking about the alternative to Carney in a positive light and how it can make things potentially better and potentially get us out of this recession, they're talking about the definition of a recession and about Pierre's terrible leadership. Isn't he just awful? Meanwhile, we are in a recession, and there's so much shady business going on that doesn't make the news at all. It is so ridiculous. Anyways, that's my case against the Liberal government, why I think that they're failing Canadians and doing a terrible job on the economy, on trade. If you enjoyed this episode and want more commentary on Canadian federal politics from a conservative perspective, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with somebody who might enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!